Hello, is anybody there? Do let me know. It looks like the sound is working now. Flippin' Nora. Do let me know that you can see and hear me. This is getting a little bit out of hand. It's getting a bit out of hand. I can't quite deal with this. Please let me know you're there if anyone's there. I'll carry on anyway because I want to keep this up. So we were talking about beasts and wretches and the devil and how that was a totally different thing in Shakespeare's time than it is to most people today. Don't want to disregard the very religious few of you, but not few of you, there's lots of you. But there's generally government has more power than religion, but back in these days, religion and church and government were like the same kind of kettle of fish, and there was a lot of scaremongering and tactical play on the way that religion was used to control the masses. And so what I was just highlighting, Rodney said about Goethe's Faust, and I was saying exactly that's a great thing to read if you want to look up more of the excuse me, devil imagery and the things that people would have imagined would be conjured when the devil was conjured. And I think remembering again and respecting the weight that would have carried on people's behavior, it was really, really dark, deep, dangerous stuff to talk about and explore and think about. It was fearful. It would scare the living bejesus out of you, right? So it's not just a case of thinking of wretches and beasts like little creatures. I'm also thinking about Dog Soldiers now, which my partner made me watch, but those kind of like clearly puppets, clear people in suits with hats on or whatever, wearing platform shoes as the wolf or whatnot. It was real scary stuff. These weren't just little monsters or creatures. This was dangerous, this was real, and this could absolutely destroy your soul. These were monsters that could take your soul, your very essence of being, and keep you with them for eternity. So again, this has all got to be at the forefront of your mind when you're looking at this play or any of Shakespeare's plays, because although it's really front topic in this scene, Beatrice and Benedict talk about this sort of stuff and Greek analogies and all these sorts of things. Having a good working knowledge of that will only help you in any of Shakespeare's plays. And I'm actually ordering a Bible so I can start doing some proper studying on it, just to explore what these little stories and references are and actually meant to people back in those days. So, wilt thou be made a man out of my vice? Wilt thou be made a man out of my vice? We kind of talked about that on the previous one. I'll move on because we are running out of time. It's not a kind of incest to take life from thine own sister's shame? ? She's asking him questions now to get him thinking about his actions and what he's asking her to do. And that's one of the worst things. Incest as well. Like, it's just wrong, and even genetically you can't do it. Like, it's disgusting, it's wrong, like it's not something that happens naturally, it's against nature. And so for her to bring that up as well, for her to actually give give voice to all of this and her ideas on this and these questions, it's dark stuff. And I think you've got to realize the weight of this. It's not a kind of incest to take life from thine own sister's shame. Is it not corrupt, immoral, not right? It's lovely. It's a lovely way. It's not lovely, it's awful, but it's a lovely way of writing it. What should I think? When I read that, I kind of gave it away a little bit, but I do think it is. She's genuinely asking, what should I think? How should I think of this? How else do you want me to think of this? If she was giving it to him, what should I think? What do you want me to think here? No, I've just expressed what I think it is. It's incestuous for me to do this and for you to live out of my shame. It's an incest. Do you want to become a man by me doing wrong? She's really playing on, not playing, but exploring and asking about the morality of this. What should I think? And then we've got this, heaven shield, my mother played my father fair. I'd love to know what people think of this bit. It's like an exclaim again. We've got another exclamation mark. So within the first, 6-7 lines, we've got 4 exclamation marks and 3 questions. No full stops. Again, another very clear indication of how Shakespeare, how Isabella should be behaving in this moment. These aren't just little dashes and dots that are thrown around willy-nilly. And any good writer knows how to use punctuation to its full effect, and any good actor also does. And that's what this work does as well with Shakespeare. It forces you to do that because you can't get it. You can't convey it without knowing the punctuation. I do that in the auditions all the time. I'm like, is that a question there or is it an exclamation mark? Like, what is it there? You need to know because it's part of what you say and how you're feeling and how you behave. Really important. Heaven shield, my mother played my father fair. Heaven shield, I kind of feel like that's not heaven forbid, but heaven, the opposite of that. Heaven, if you shield, protect. Heaven, please protect that my mother played my father fair. So I think what she's saying is that please say that God tell me that my mother didn't corrupt my father or didn't toy with him. She's talking about the courting process and the idea, I think, here that if there was a corruption in the process, and this was a real belief of the time, if there was a corruption or something untoward that happened in the courting process or the lovemaking, that the sex of the conception, that's what I'm trying to say, on the conception of the child. I do this hand gesture all the time. I was doing it a lot in my class earlier. I need to check what that means in sign language because I don't want people to think I'm doing it. Anyway, she's saying if anything untoward happened during the conception of, I mean, she didn't say me or him, but I think she means of them, it's your brother and sister. Heaven, I pray to heaven that nothing untoward happened there. And I do find it interesting that she says that my mother played my father fair. And not my father played my mother fair. Interesting. Heaven shield that my mother played my father fair beautifully, looked after him, didn't. And I do think as well, because of Isabella's experience in life, she is a nun, so she's not lived in the real world really for a while. She hasn't seen what goes on day to day. She has been sheltered from the corruption of Vienna at the time, or in context of the play. There's a reason why the Duke leaves and hands over to Angelo. It's getting out of hand. He wants to see how he's going to behave dealing with everything in Vienna. I really hope none of this gets wasted. I feel like I need to record somehow, some other way. We'll see. Gosh, heaven shield, my mother played my father fair. Let's actually look up played quickly because I do think that's important. Engage in activity for enjoyment. Amuse oneself, take part in sport, participate. Again, all of these words I would say are around sex. If you participate with someone in those days as well, or if you're engaging, physical activity, and obviously games, sexual games, foreplay, all of that sort of stuff, I think is really relevant here as well. But I think it's kind of naive that she says my mother played, and I think it's this idea that the woman was the corruption. Eve, she's a nun. She would have believed that Eve was the one who tempted and sinned first. So I do think this whole fallen woman thing would be really at the forefront of Isabella's mind, and actually a really important thing I've not mentioned yet. She doesn't want to be an Eve. She doesn't want to give in to temptation, even though it's not her will. The act itself is a sin. Be cooperative. Represent a character in a theatrical performance. Play. In fact, there's so many. It's so interesting. Move lightly and quickly. Disappear. Flicker. See, that as well makes me think more of a satanic demon, like hopping around or something as well. Activity of gambling. Space through which scope or freedom to act or operate, light and constantly changing movement. Okay, lovely. Let's look up played then, because there's definitely that sense of, oh, he played me for a fool, engage in activity, take part in a sport, same thing again. I feel like there's strike a ball, assign, take part, bet or gamble on or at, perform. Allow. Doesn't actually say what I thought it might say. But interesting here, it says the origin is leap for joy, dance, and that's an Old English and a Middle Dutch origin. So isn't that interesting that my mother plays? So leap for joy, again, this kind of movement activity. I think she's talking about sex here. What Isabella are you referring to? Hi, Herbert. I'm referring to Isabella from Measure for Measure, Act 3, Scene 1, where she's talking to Claudio. This is a Shakespeare play. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to know it's working. I've had some internet issues here. I keep saying sorry, it's because I'm trying to take my breath because I'm not well. It's not kind of incest life relationship. What do I think? Heaven shield my mother, played my father fair. Again, played my father beautifully. Kind of feel like that's hello, Ernest. I can see you now. Yes, can play can me to control by design. Interesting. So that's it. I have, but then maybe she also means hopefully my mother controlled my father well or something, or kept him well, kept him uncorrupt. So two different ways to look at it there, but I do think that Eve argument and that religious connotation that of the fallen woman, the woman is the temptress. I think that would be at the forefront of her mind. I'd probably play it more that way. That she's hoping her mum wasn't corrupted, or corruptive as well. So that's an exclamation. For such a warped, and then she goes on to explain why. I hope that's not the case, or I hope that is the case, whatever way you're playing it. Hi, Ron. Has it only just come back on? Because I've been talking for about 11 minutes. But I've only just got a comment like now. Oh gosh, please tell me you've got everything that I've said. Hilarious. For such a warped slip of wilderness, again, if something's warped, it's bent, it's caved, it's not right, it's wrong. For such a warped slip, and again, a slip is a mistake usually, isn't it? It's a slip of the tongue. No, walk the puppy. Oh gosh, thank goodness. Good. Hope the puppy's well. You have to send me a photo of the puppy, actually. Adorable. For such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from his blood. So yeah, so this reinforces my instinct, which is the idea that let's hope my mother didn't corrupt my father. She wasn't a fallen woman. And I think she's talking about the birth of like I was talking about conception well, maybe if you saw it, I don't know if you did because the internet connection, but the idea of if there was a problem with the conception of a child, the child would then be spawned ill. That if a baby came out disfigured, for example, they'd believe that was because there was something wrong with the conception or the mother's done something wrong. This is the proof that something bad has happened or she's not a good woman. You see how, and again, we know now with modern science that's just not true. But in those days, that was it. That was the science. That was the belief. So again, so this is what she's kind of picking up on now. And again, the wilderness. So I think the passion, the nature, but also the barren. Interesting. See, really interesting words. For such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from his blood. I initially was thinking his blood was like God's blood, but it's not got a capital H, and I'm pretty sure it would have if Shakespeare meant his blood. But I think she's talking about her father's blood. And this opens up the whole kettle of worms, can of worms, kettle of fish, of the backstory of their parents. Was her mum a fallen woman who got sent to a hysterical insane asylum? Was her dad some sort of important duke of the town? Or the other way around, did her dad die and her mum become this bitter, cynical witch woman or something? So it's really interesting. I think it's really important that you and whoever's playing Claudio with you, or if you're playing Claudio with Isabella, you do that work together and you understand your background and your mother-father relationship. And however that would be, because she brings it up here, and she affirms that her father is the good guy here, and I find that interesting. And this is what I found really a struggle with this play when I studied it as a younger woman. I was like so black and white about these things, and so like she should be with the woman on that. She should no. she should do that for her brother. Like, who is she? You know, it was a really weird thing. It was a really, really, really weird thing when I studied this before. But interesting now coming at it 10 years later and looking at it as a grown up, and going into much more detail than I ever did in English literature. So have a play with that. So interesting. For such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from his blood. Nothing so warped slipped out of my father's blood. In his blood, not his skin or his hair or his eyes or his mouth. He never spoke anything ill. His blood, his being, his core, one of his not bile, but what are they all called? Humors. From his humor, his essence, nothing warped came from him. So she's questioning her motherhood, that maybe they were conceived out of wedlock, maybe they're bastard children, and that's why, all of these questions are probably whizzing through her brain. Is she wondering if there's a generational corruption? Yeah, I think, I don't know what you're walking the dog, of course. I was saying about this whole, if there was a corruption around the conception of a child. Yeah, the four humors. Thank you, Ernest. Or if the baby came out disfigured or whatever, like, they believed that it was because the woman had done something wrong, or there was something wrong with her. So I think she's saying, is it because our mother behaved badly that there's that you're behaving so badly? I don't think she's putting it on her at this point. Blood viewed as essence. Exactly. It's what keeps you alive, right? And remember, in those days, science wasn't great, and it was one of the four humors, I believe. In fact, was it? Have I made that up? I know there's bile, something else, blood, air, phlegm, water, black bile is earth, and yellow bile is fire. That's the belief and theory of the humors. But remember, when you died, you probably would have, or when you were sick, you would have coughed up blood or bile or phlegm. And maybe what was the other one again? Yellow bile, black bile, yellow bile. So that's what they thought was coursing around your veins, and blood was like the biggest one, wasn't it? If you're sick, there's only so much sick you can get out with the, this is disgusting, I know, with the phlegm and the bile, but blood like pours out of you. So I think there's a reason she doesn't say phlegm or bile or bones or marrow here. She says blood. It's rich, it's thick, it's bright red, and there's plenty more of that than the other things in our body. So there you go. His essence, his being, what makes him him. Oh gosh, I'm knackered. I think I need some painkillers or some medication over this. And then we've got a defiance here. Take my defiance. Die. Perish. Full stop. Defiance, semicolon, die, semicolon, perish. She isn't quite done. Take my defiance. Die. No, don't die. Perish. Whoa. For your sister to turn on you like this. For anyone to turn on anyone like this, there's got, I don't want you to just die. I want you to perish. There's got to be an alternative thought behind perish. And indeed, every sentence that you say in Shakespeare. Full stop. Might but my bending down reprieve thee from thy fate, it should proceed. If my bending down would contradict this, oh wait, no, if my bending down, so bending down means complying, doesn't it? If you bend, you bow down, you do go with it. Might but my bending down reprieve thee from thy fate, it should proceed. She's saying his fate should proceed. Might but my bending down reprieve thee. Let's look up reprieve, actually. I get this, but I'm struggling to articulate it. Oh, receive, reprieve. Reprieve, cancel or postpone the punishment. Cancellation or pardon, yes. Reprieve, rebackseas. Lovely. And I actually want to look up as well bending down, because it also reminds me of bowing down to God there and bending down in prayer. And she goes on to prayer afterwards. To bend one's leg, yeah, I know what. Yeah, it's not coming down. Interesting. Here we go. No, it's not going with what I'm after. But I'm thinking if you bend down, you bend your will. If you bend, your will is malleable. I bent that. I think there's a quote of that in As You Like It, actually, something about bending. I bend to your will, basically, or something. Might but my bending down reprieve thee from thy fate, it should proceed. But then I also kind of feel like she's saying there, might but my bending down, so my giving up of my virginity by extension, like my bending of my will, my doing it, reprieve you. If anything but my bending down could stop you, it should proceed. And I think that's it. That's what I'm trying to say here. But I do think as well it could be misconstrued another way. But I do think that is misconstrued, actually. So yeah, I think what she's saying here, might but my bending down reprieve thee from thy fate, it should proceed. If there was anything else but what he's asking of me at this moment in time, to give up my maidenhead, it should proceed. Would save your life, it should proceed. But it doesn't. So then she goes on to say, I'll pray 1,000 prayers for thy death. That's how I'm taking it. Let me know if you think it is the other thing that I'm trying to say, though. But hey, right, let's read some of this. She is speaking some Game of Thrones stuff. Yes, she is. Rodney says, interesting she may view herself as the one needed to re-steer the family onto an honourable, sacred path. Fantastic, Rodney. And this is the thing as well. She has probably, like, why has she gone into the nunnery? Maybe there was, and why is it Claudio that is being made an example of? I think there's something wider going on here. Maybe it's in the text. Forgive me, I haven't read this play for quite a while. But maybe their family were the frickin' troublemakers. And maybe they've had enough. And that's why Claudio is getting the grunt of this. And maybe she did enter the nunnery because she felt her family were corrupt. And she couldn't change that. Or she wanted to be pure. You know, there's a reason why she wasn't just born a nun. She was born in a family, a general family, but she has chosen that path. What prompted that? You've got to know. You've got to do that back work for your Isabella. So great point to make, Rodney. Thank you for saying that. Lannister going to make for an interesting conversation at Christmas dinner, right? Gross. Well, not gross, but just tricky to navigate. Reprieve is a temporary stay of punishment. Yes, she is not absolving or forgiving, just putting it off. Judgment is still coming for him. Yeah, so that's the other thing. Is it the whole like, but then she says it should proceed. I don't know. I'm not sure. Because she still sees him as a bad seed of their father. Well, mother, though, she specifically says, I hope my mother wasn't bad to my father. So, do you see how specific he is being there? And if it was the other way round, her blood, like nothing for such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from her blood, it would change everything. And it would actually kind of work more in her favor, I think, here, because she's talking about her brother. Claudio isn't a woman in, you know, original gender choosings from Shakespeare. It's interesting, isn't it? They're not sisters. Shakespeare gets to make the point about elite hypocrisy, evil in this play. Interesting was allowed via censors. It was not always welcome on stage. Absolutely. Yes, mother, my bad. Yes. Oh, good. But I'm glad you said that as well, though, because it does change it. And this is what you see I often do. I'm like, oh, what if we swapped that word out for another one? What would it mean then? And it helps you understand the true meaning because you can see what he has actually put in. I find it really interesting. And yeah, there is a reason why Claudio is a man. You've got the man, the man and the woman. And he's really exploring the differences of gender here, and how it feels to have, you know, it's really interesting, isn't it? Ah, and God is a man, but obviously he was born of Mary, or what, not God, but Jesus was born of Mary. And I think it's him, isn't it? It's all about his honor and the Holy Trinity of him. And then Jesus was a male as well. And Magdalene was and again, I'm very vague on all of this, but it's interesting the way genders are played and used and depicted. That narrative in the Bible and the religious connotation that Isabella would be believing and being shown would be very different to Claudio. But it's interesting that Claudio isn't a priest, and it's Claudio saying this, and Isabella was the one about to be beheaded. Imagine flipping those around. I think it'd be great thing to do. Sure to play if the Duke orders his own punishment. I know, right? It wouldn't be boring, but it would be, well, yeah, totally sure to play. He's dead. Who are you, Isabella? No, I won't listen to you, Isabella. Kill him, the end. That'd be it, wouldn't it? Unless he did listen to Isabella. So there we go. Take my defiance. Die, perish. Might but my bending down reprieve thee from thy fate? It should proceed. I'll pray 1,000 prayers for thy death. No word to save thee. And I do kind of feel like that's a little bit cruel, actually, the whole reprieve bit. I feel a bit like it's, if there's anything else, I'd do it. And it should go ahead. But there isn't, and I'm going to pray that you die. And do you see what I mean? Do you see how I had this conflict as a young woman, thinking that was just all bang out of order? But I'm sure some young men have as well. Whatever gender you are, however whichever, if you are a gender, I don't know. How would you take that? If someone said that to you. Crazy. And then, no word to save thee. So not even a prayer that you are reprieved, that something else comes up. No word to save thee. She is 100% for him dying now. Actively wishing he dies. Claudio says, nay, hear me, Isabel. No, listen, Isabel. Hear what I'm saying. And Isabella says, oh, fie, fie, fie. The sins, I love this bit. Thy sins not accidental, but a trade. And this makes me think as well about their parents. Was it a trade? Was the mother a prostitute? Maybe the father was the pimp. We don't know, but there has to be some decision there. And either way, she does stand truer to her father. And maybe that is because of the God-loving upbringing she's got in the nunnery. Interesting. CHB. What's CHB? Let me know what CHB is. Oh gosh. Oh. Oh gosh. For once, I don't think this is allergies. I do think it is something worse because it's all here. But yes, not COVID, miraculously. Thank goodness. I did 2 tests and everything. Thy sin's not accidental, but a trade. Full stop. This is no accident. This is a business. I see Ernest, cold-hearted bitch. But isn't he a cold-hearted bitch as well? I understand why she refused, but the venom in the words, what's disconcerting. But interesting, isn't it? Interesting, because I think the venom is understandable at this point. The way he is drawing on her, trying to guilt trip her in there. He's not just asking, like he's going well out of his way to make her do this. And I think she's got every right to be as venomous as we do. But for some, it's so interesting actually, because this is coming back to the Phoebe thing. Oh, but she's really mean to Silvius. Yes, but the way Silvius is behaving is not okay as well. But for some reason, we do empathize more towards the males when the female get venomous and mean and blunt. Isn't that interesting? It's only his life, of course, and in this context, it's his life. But it could be her life too. She could get a disease. She could become impregnated. And remember as well, it's this whole thing. Single motherhood is a thing these days, or single parents are real things. It's not a frowned upon thing, although it is, and people do still make very, very big judgments about single parents, especially single mothers. I think there's this romanticized idea about single fathers, but single mothers are often like, oh god, and I've done it before. I've done it before. Oh, she's got different kids or different dads. Oh, it says a lot about her, doesn't it? No, it doesn't actually. It says a lot about that situation. We don't know what went on there. So, um, so interesting you say that. And of course it's her chastity, but remember, again, in this context of this day and age, she would be shunned, she'd be out on the street. If she had a baby as a result of that pregnancy or that union, she'd be homeless, without money, disowned, have no support. Like that, living a life like that is more terrifying than dying, if from a woman's perspective. She'd want to die from that, surely. If you were completely alone and society shunned you and you'd get beaten up and raped on the street, trying to keep a child surviving, versus your brother dying, I'm starting to empathize a hell of a lot more with her. So it's just interesting. I know, still harsh, but I think that's a really important thing to flag up, because I see it all the time, and I work with a lot of men in the job that I do as a panelist. And whenever we talk about Phoebe, there is this, oh, she's horrible, she's so mean. But we don't see what Silvius is like. And when we do see it, it's also bad. It's not okay for men to harass women and do that as well. But why is it we go, oh, but she's a bitch, and not, yeah, he's out of order as well, It's really interesting, really interesting. So that's it. Thy sin's not accidental, but a trade. You had a choice in this. You had a business transaction and you chose it. Interesting. And it's the sin. It's not crime as well. It's the sin. The sin is a business. And it's true. They say that's the oldest business, isn't it? Prostitution. Mercy to thee would prove itself a bawd. 'Tis best that thou diest quickly. Mercy to thee would prove itself a bawd. So she's not quite personifying it there, but itself. So let's just quickly look up board as well, because I think it's spelled BAWD, and I think that's an important, what have I've managed to look up shopping define board, comes up with some hoodies. A woman in charge of a brothel. So here we go. Mercy to you. If mercy was granted to you, it would prove its, and she doesn't even say she would prove herself a bawd. It would prove itself a bawd. And I think that's a play on words as well. Abhorred, but a bawd is what it actually is. It would prove herself a bawd. Really interesting. I've never clocked that. Mercy to thee would prove itself. Oh, what is it? A woman in charge of a brothel. So what's that? There's another name for that, though, isn't it? What's that called? From Old French, bored, shameless. Procuress. Mistress. Prove itself like a, even though that's not the right word, but mistress of a prostitution building. I was about to say that. But yeah, saying that she would be a corrupt woman. And remember, mercy is, of course, no, it's not mercy, it's justice, isn't it? Oh, excuse me. Madame, yes, madame. And it says, I can see both sides. That's what makes it great writing. Of course, C thinks it is a little thing he's asking. She thinks it is everything. And it is to both of them. Of course, your life is everything. But also, when you're dead, you're dead. But neither of them believe that, or he's using that argument to try and get her over to that. But she does believe that. And I think, again, that's the other contradiction. I feel like he's using her belief against her to manipulate her, when actually he's just scared of dying. He doesn't believe in God and all of that, because if he did, he wouldn't have committed the crime and the sin in the first place. Do you see? And that's why I think the "oh faithless coward" comes in as well. Interesting. And then he says, "Oh, hear me, Isabella," again, Claudio does. Yeah, 'tis best that thou diest quickly. So interesting. So let's have another little read of it then, and I will wrap it up for today. Really good stuff. Sorry for the technical glitches, absolute freaking nightmare, but we're getting there. Let's have a go. So Claudio's just said what he said, and Isabella is livid. Oh, you beast! Oh, faithless coward! Oh, dishonest wretch! Wilt thou be made a man out of my vice? It's not a kind of incest to take life from thine own sister's shame. What should I think? Heaven shield, my mother played my father fair. For such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from his blood. Take my defiance. Die. Perish. Might but my bend down reprieve thee from thy fate? It should proceed. I'll pray 1,000 prayers for thy death. No word to save thee. Oh, fie, fie, fie. Thy sin's not accidental, but a trade. Mercy to thee would prove itself abhorred. 'Tis best that thou diest quickly. Not too different from the first one. Quite angry. I think I'd need to iron out those thoughts a little bit more. There's some where I was really coming in a little bit on him, but I think a bit on him. And that fie, then I rushed that because I hadn't thought it through. But that's okay. This is a rehearsal. So there you go. Interesting. And the thing is, I could have probably said that from memory already. Do you see how well written it is? The thoughts are very clear. And the intention is very clear, and it helps you learn the lines quicker if you know what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, you beast. Oh, faithless coward. Oh, dishonest wretch. Wilt thou be made a man out of my vice? Is it vice? Yeah, it is vice. It's not a kind of incest to gain life. It's not gain life, but life out of thy sister's shame. To take life from thine own sister's shame. What should I think? Heaven shield, my mother played my father fair. For no such warped slip of wilderness. For such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er slipped, ne'er left his blood or something. Ne'er issued from his blood. Again, issued, if you issue something that's birthing, it's an issue. Interesting. See, I was just trying to remember the words there. For such a warped slip of, it's not even just for a warped slip, for such a warped slip of wilderness ne'er issued from his blood. Take my defiance, die, perish. If but my bending down, something like that. Might but my bending down, reprieve thee from thy death fate. Interesting, you see. So interesting. Anyway, I was just doing that as a little personal experiment there. Yes, Ernest. Oh, hang on, I've missed a bit. What? Someone using religious to manipulate others? Wow, that's really unheard of. I know. Yes, Ernest, classic. My favorite is the Verdi opera Don Carlos. Spanish Inquisitor role is manipulation personified. Brilliant. Well, I'll have to check that out because I find that very interesting. Also, if you really like classical text, fellas, you should look at which one was I was working on? Pony. Ben Jonson. You should check out that as well. And also, there's another one that I was working on recently. Another kind of restoration-y, Jacobean-y type thing. Can't remember, but anyway. Cool, another opera reference. Yes, Don Carlos is fantastic. Awesome reference. Brilliant. Love it. Guys, it's been a real pleasure. I'm going to add this speech to my repertoire and learn it. And yes, I think we might carry on with this. I kind of want to look at the Duke stuff as well, but I know I've been really slack with my newsletters these last few weeks. It's just been carnage. I will try and, not carnage, so dramatic. Just been busy, it slipped. I'll sort out a schedule for this because that is something I want to sort out, but I'll see if we're going to go on to the Duke. But why not read on a little bit anyway? we might do a few from Measure for Measure because I'm really enjoying it at the moment. But I am also personally working on The Winter's Tale. So maybe let me know in the comments if you'd rather keep working on Measure for a bit or you fancy a bit of Winter's Tale. Marvellous. Let's leave it there. Oh, thank you, Rodney. Bless you. Much appreciated that you guys show up. It really does mean the world. And one more thing I need to tell you about. So exciting. So there's a play I've only just started reading. If you guys haven't heard of Mark Rylance, by the way, he's one of my favourite actors, and he's very well known. That's the wrong play. He's very well known for doing Shakespeare so brilliantly well. There's a play called I Am Shakespeare that he has written. Act 1, Scene 1. Frank arrives for his weekly broadcast. A broadcast doing what? I hear you cry. He does a live broadcast every week about Shakespeare and Shakespeare's authorship. I haven't actually read the whole play yet. I just started and got really blown away by the fact that it's about a guy in his garage hosting a call-in show about Shakespeare and talking about him. It says that he's a Shakespearean authorship. I always say authorship, it's authorship researcher. And he's obsessed with Shakespeare. And I just think it's really funny because I feel like it's kind of what we've been doing. And I'm really looking forward to finally reading the play. I've had this on my shelf forever. But yeah, it's this kind of live discussion about Shakespeare. And I was like, how have I not read this? Because that's kind of what we've been doing for the last 2 years, 3 years now. Coming up 3 years. So yeah, just thought I'd share that with you. Maybe have a little look into it. If you look up Mark Rylance, you'll see some of his phenomenal work. All that being said, now I'll stop talking. I just wanted to share that with you. I think it's hilarious. I was just suddenly like, oh my God, that's me. That's me going live every week with my friends talking about Shakespeare. Let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you next week for some more funsies. For some more Shakespeare, which is fun. I'll see you then. Bye. Oh, so tired.